The sun was sinking behind the distant hills, painting a reddish glow across the vast cornfields of rural Greenwood, Mississippi. There stood a small old wooden house, its tin roof rusted over the years. Inside lived Eli Johnson, a 13-year-old black boy, and his mother Rosa, a thin woman whose eyes always shone with determination and boundless love. Life for the mother and son was not easy. Eli's father had died in a lumber mill accident when the boy was 8. Since then, Rosa had shouldered everything, working as a farmhand and cleaning houses. Eli helped by collecting scrap metal and repairing old things to resell. Though poor, the boy's eyes always sparkled with a deep-seated faith and hope. That afternoon, Eli sat on the riverbank where the Mississippi flowed quietly. He pulled out an old, worn notebook, its pages yellowed, and began to scribble. He loved to write, to record what he saw, what he dreamed of. Chief among those dreams was becoming an inventor, someone who could create change for the poor. If I could just make a water purifier, then people in our village wouldn't have to drink the dirty water anymore, right, Mama? Rosa smiled, stroking his messy, curly hair. Yes, my Eli will do it. You just have to believe in the good that's inside you. The boy smiled, his eyes mirroring the sunset's fading light. That night, when Rosa coughed and choked from an old asthma attack, Eli sat worriedly beside her. The family had no money for proper medicine. He could only boil ginger water. He quietly held her hand, a calloused but extremely warm hand.
I promise to make you pro, Mama. I won't let you suffer forever. Outside the window, the night wind rustled through the corn, carrying the song of damper sandal rainy days.
In the darkness, Eli glanced out and for the first time, saw a small light flash across the river.
A strange light, as if a star had fallen into the water.
He ran out, barefoot on the wet grass, and approached the bank. It was a glowing glass bottle, with a small rolled-up piece of paper inside. He opened it with trembling hands. On the paper was written in soft, looping handwriting, "If you are lost, look to the light. Miracles don't come from far away, they are in your heart." Eli stared at the words in awe, a strange electric feeling rising in his chest. He didn't know who had left the bottle, nor what that miracle was. But in the poor, dark countryside, he felt a real light had been kindled in his soul.
The next morning, pale sunlight filtered through the rotten window, waking Eli.
He placed the glowing glass bottle carefully into the canvas bag he carried everywhere. The bottle had become his talisman, a silent promise that life was still good, no matter the poverty. Today was his first day back at Greenwood High School after the summer break. It was an old public school on a red dirt road, attended mostly by the children of farmhands and migrant workers. Eli wore a patched hand-me-down shirt and a backpack his mother had mended many times, walking among peers in new clothes and shiny sneakers. Whispers drifted behind him.
Look, the rag boy is back.
I heard he collects bottles for a living. I bet he doesn't even have money for lunch. Eli lowered his head, ignoring them. He was used to the sting of ridicule. He knew that in this school he wasn't just poor, he was an old shadow amidst children fighting to climb out of the mud. The glowing bottle in his pocket was the only thing preventing him from shattering under their gaze. In science class, Ms. Mary Thompson looked at Eli with warm, understanding eyes. She was one of the few who saw beyond his tattered clothes. After class, she called him over. "Eli, I heard you like building things, right?"
Yes, Ma'am.
"I want to build a water purifier. In my village, the river water is still very dirty, and many people get sick." "That is a wonderful idea. If you need it, I can lend you some old tools from the lab." Eli looked up, his eyes shining like the sun emerging from the clouds. It was the first time someone had truly validated his dream. But the belief was fragile. That afternoon, when Eli brought salvaged wires and tubes to the backyard to try and assemble his prototype, 3 older boys, Derek, Paul, and Jake, approached. They were known bullies, and Eli was an easy target. "Hey kid, what is that junk?" Derek sneered. "A water purifier? Ha.
You trying to save the world."
Paul snatched a metal tube from Eli's hands and tossed it onto the muddy ground. "People like you should only dream of washing dishes, not inventing." Eli stood still, his hands shaking, but he did not protest. He just watched them walk away, then quietly picked up each item, wiping off the mud.
That evening, Eli sat alone by the river, the water reflecting the distant moonlight.
He took out the jar, the light inside still flickering. He looked at the familiar words, "Miracles don't come from far away, they are in your heart." For the first time, Eli burst into tears. Not just from the insult, but from the helpless pain of someone desperate to rise but being forcibly pushed down. He squeezed the jar, feeling the faint light was just a sweet, cruel lie. "If miracles are in my heart," he whispered bitterly, "why does it hurt so much? Why is there only darkness?" In a moment of desperation, he threw the jar onto the grass. It tumbled, but its light did not die. It pulsed, weak but defiant.
And then, something strange happened. A faint, ethereal blue light spread from the jar, washing over the river.
Suddenly, the murky water directly in front of Eli became less opaque, as if filtered by that soft glow. He stared wide-eyed, disbelieving. He dipped his hand in. The water was cool and perfectly clear. Eli jumped up, his heart pounding. He didn't know if it was real or a trick of the mind, but his lost faith suddenly flared up again. Maybe, just maybe, the miracle wasn't the light in the jar, but the simple, desperate courage it inspired in him. 3 days after that strange night, a heavy rainstorm blanketed the countryside. The wind howled, the ground was muddy, and the wooden roofs of the shacks rattled violently. In his small shelter, Eli huddled at an old table, working with salvaged tin cans, copper wire, and a plastic bottle. On a wooden board, he had scribbled a diagram, "Handmade water purifier, version 1.0. If I can do this, people won't have to drink dirty river water anymore," he whispered, his eyes blazing with determination. But the rain poured through a crack in the door, soaking his drawing. Water mixed with the black ink, smearing it. He tried to cover it, but the paper tore, the tin cans crashed to the floor, and water flooded his workspace. Everything collapsed. He sank to the floor, the rain mixing with his tears. "Maybe, miracles don't really exist," his voice was muffled by the sound of the wind. At that moment, a soft knock came on the door. A small figure stepped in. It was Ms. Mary, his science teacher. She held a tattered umbrella and a paper bag.
"Eli, I've been looking for you. Are you all right?"
I was trying to rebuild the machine, but the rain ruined it."
"Ms.
Mary placed the bag on the table, pulling out plastic tubing, an old battery, and a fresh notebook. "I have some spare things from the school lab. If you're willing, we can try again."
"But he failed, ma'am."
"I guess I'm not good enough." "Eli," she bent down, meeting his eyes with a firm gaze, "good is not someone who never fails. Good is someone who refuses to give up, even when soaking wet in the rain." The sentence was a ray of light piercing the darkness of his heart. Eli glanced at the glass jar on the table, which still emitted a faint light. That light now seemed to reflect the unwavering belief in his teacher's eyes. That night, they worked together late. Eli soldered the joints. Mary helped cut wires and attach the pipes. They had no modern equipment, only an oil lamp and shared persistence. Outside, the storm continued, but inside the small shack, the light of their shared purpose burned warmly. 3 days later, the weather cleared. Eli carried his manual water purifier, version 2.0, to the riverbank. He scooped up a bucket of murky water and poured it into the filter. Drops of clear, clean water began to trickle out the other end, slowly, purely. He took a trembling sip. The water was cool, without the smell of mud. It worked. It really worked. Mary stood behind him, smiling. "You just created your own miracle, young man."
They looked together in the bright, post-rain sunshine. Eli looked up at the sky, watching the white clouds disperse.
A powerful fire was kindled in his heart, the fire of faith, effort, and realized hope. That evening, Eli brought the machine to the village well. He invited everyone to try it. At first, the villagers were skeptical. But as the water came out clear, odorless, and mud-free, the whispers of doubt turned to gasps of admiration. "He actually did it? I can't believe it. A poor boy is so brilliant." Martha, the market vendor, wept as she took her first clean sip. "It's been years since I had water like this." Eli watched their joyful faces, tears welling in his own eyes. This was the miracle he had been praying for. Not the light from the jar, but the shared trust and relief on his people's faces. But deep down, Eli still didn't know that a greater challenge awaited him, an incident that would push the entire village of Greenwood to the brink of despair. And Eli, the poor boy with the jar of light, would have to become their only hope. A week after Eli's water purifier began providing Greenwood with clean water, a sudden cold wind blew in from the mountains. The usually peaceful Greenwood River turned murky, foaming white, growling like an angry beast. That evening, Eli was writing in his diary when a panicked shout broke the silence. "Eli, get up. The river is rising fast." He rushed out and was stunned. The sky was pitch black, thunder booming. The river had overflowed its banks, roaring through the cornfields. The small houses were shaking, oil lamps flickered like dying stars. "Oh my God, if the water reaches the village," Eli whispered, his heart hammering. He ran to the central church where everyone was gathering. In the chaos, the elders and children held each other, terrified. Martha gripped his arm. "Eli, what do we do? They say the makeshift dam might burst." Eli swallowed, looking at the black, turbulent sky. He knew the small, upstream dam was too weak. If it failed, Greenwood would be swept away. Ignoring the pouring rain, he ran straight for the dam. The wind stung his face, the frigid water splashed his body. The men of the village were fighting the current with sandbags, but they were frail against the torrent. "No time. The water is too strong," one man yelled. "We have to do something." Eli shouted, his voice trembling. He looked around, his mind racing, remembering the bypass pipe from his filter design. A desperate thought flashed: if we divert the water to the old logging canal in the forest, it might relieve the pressure. No one believed him. But Eli didn't wait for permission. He charged through the rain, pulling at old planks, scrambling to unblock the mud-filled ditch. He worked alone, amidst the fear and doubt of the villagers. His hands bled, his shirt tore, the water surged to his knees. "The boy's crazy. Get out of the way." "No. Trust me. The water needs a way out." Eli screamed, digging with strength born of love and desperation. Then Ms. Mary arrived, shouting over the storm. "Eli, you can't be so reckless." "I have to, ma'am. Or the village is lost." She looked at his determined face, a look no flood could wash away. She grabbed a shovel and joined him. They dug together, scoop after scoop, plank after plank. The rain was relentless, but the water began to shift, slowly, then with force. And then, bam! A tremendous crack rang out, and a section of the dam burst. The water rushed out like a giant hungry serpent, racing toward the newly opened ditch. Eli was thrown off his feet, sliding, and disappeared into the raging water. "Eli!" Mary screamed, plunging into the current. She dragged the boy out, his body cold and covered in mud. She held him, trembling. "You're going to be fine. You saved everyone." The next morning, the rain had stopped. Greenwood was a swamp, but the village was standing. Not a single house had been washed away. The dam had partially broken, but the water had been diverted, thanks to the ditch Eli and Mary dug in the dark. The villagers found the boy lying on the riverbank, exhausted but breathing. Mary sat beside him, wiping the mud from his face. When Eli opened his eyes, he saw people gathered around him, their faces dirty, but their eyes filled with overwhelming gratitude. "Boy, you saved Greenwood. The miracle happened, and it wore your face." Eli smiled weakly, looking at the gentle river sparkling in the sunlight. "No, the miracle didn't come from me," he said softly. "It came from people believing in each other." That night, the whole village of Greenwood lit candles around the church. They sang old songs of kindness and hope. In the flickering light, Eli sat, his black eyes shining like the stars. The bottle of light sat on the table, emitting a faint, warm glow, like the very soul of the community. A year passed since the terrible flood. Greenwood slowly came back to life, like a wildflower blooming after a harsh winter. New roofs were built, old dirt roads were paved with stones, and children's laughter echoed across the valley. And Eli, the poor boy of the past, was now a name spoken with respect and love. His small shack was replaced by a warm wooden house, bearing a small sign, Greenwood Youth Science Center founder, Eli Thompson. Every morning, he taught the village children how to make water filters, how to generate electricity from wind power, and how to read weather maps. Innocent eyes lit up, and they all called him Teacher Eli. Ms. Mary, his former teacher, was now the center's advisor. Every time she looked at him, she smiled, her eyes filled with pride. You did it, Eli. You turned your pain into hope for others. No, he smiled. I just did what a man with a miracle in his heart was supposed to do. One June afternoon, as the golden sunlight bathed the cornfields, a haggard-looking man with sad eyes walked into the village. Eli saw him and stopped dead. Father! His voice trembled. The man nodded slightly. He had left the village years ago after his wife's death, ashamed and broken. He had wandered as a hired hand until he heard that Greenwood had been saved by a boy named Eli Thompson. I heard your name all the way across the state, he said, tears streaming down his face. I am so ashamed. I never thought the son I abandoned would be the one to save the village. Eli was silent for a long time. He looked at his father, then smiled, and took his calloused hand. Don't say that, Dad. I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to come home. They embraced in the sun-drenched yard. The whole village watched in silence, moved by the simple act of forgiveness. A week later, Greenwood held its flood anniversary ceremony. On the hilltop, beneath the old oak tree, the village gathered. Mary spoke, her voice soft. A year ago, this place was mud, tears, and fear. Today, we stand here because of courage, resilience, and love. And there was one person who made us all believe that miracles do exist. All eyes turned to Eli. He stepped forward, his voice trembling but clear. I am not the miracle. A miracle is when a whole village digs trenches together, saves lives together, and believes together. A miracle is when we choose to love each other, even with different skin colors and different fates. A wave of applause erupted, mingling with the wind. The sky seemed clearer, and the sunset painted Greenwood in a warm, forgiving yellow. As night fell, he pulled the old light jar from his pocket, the talisman of his struggle. He held it up to the children. The miracle is not in this jar, children. It is in the hearts of those who dare to believe that the world can be better. The whole village raised their candles. The small lights merged, spreading across the hill, shimmering like the Milky Way. Many years later, the story of little Eli became a legend. People said he was the poor boy who fought the flood with his bare hands and changed a village's future. But to the people of Greenwood, Eli was not a hero. He was a symbol of their own enduring faith. Every rainy season, people gathered to light candles on the riverbank where he had dug that fateful ditch. On a small stone tablet, the words Eli spoke that year were engraved forever. Miracles are not supernatural. They happen when people choose love over fear.